and he will come for the third time. This will be his third coming, not the second. And he has already come.
What do you mean? He has already come?
What don't you see in the phrase, he has already come?
Is this some kind of process, or do you mean...
He's already been born, he is here.
How would it look, let's say, in a human form?
Yes, he could walk right past and you wouldn't even know him.
The one we mean?
Right now, yes, the Son of God, he is here.
How did you feel it?
I didn't feel it, I know it. I asked God, God said, he is here, he is among you. I said, well, all right then, that means everything will be fine. He says, yes, everything will be magnificent, not just good, magnificent, everything will be, but not for everyone. Our world is collapsing, the system is collapsing. That's it, it's outdated. To put it another way, there is no point in trying to preserve something whose time has finally come to die. And I tell everyone, the world is dying. The system is dying. But that does not mean it is the absolute end. It means that we are on the threshold of a gigantic transformation, but led by the Son of God. You must truly believe in Him, you must faithfully follow Him, and those who believe in Him, those who follow Him, they will surely be in the beautiful new world. But those who spit on all of this, who do not believe, all of them will be left behind.
I laughed when he said, I asked God, God answered me. There are a lot of different jokes on this topic, yes, about how, if we talk to God, that's spirituality. But if God talks to us, that's already schizophrenia. Not about this person, no, not at all. It's just that for many viewers, I think, well, this part might have sounded a bit like that. Let me put it this way, in a few words, I'll comment on the author of these words himself. He has certain approaches, certain codes of approach. First of all, Christian egregore, definitely, and certain approaches to mysticism. There are certain approaches even to this kind of esotericism, a very special kind of esotericism. That is, he clearly had some past lives that were directly connected with these specific kinds of things.
How do you generally feel about this kind of religious concept that he's talking about?
Which? He has a lot of them, far too many.
About the fact that he has already arrived.
Let's figure this out. Is he Jesus Christ or just the Son of God? Or is Jesus Christ the only Son of God? This is a very important topic.
For some reason, I feel like he's talking about the Son of God. As if
he's not talking about Jesus Christ. It's like he's just talking about the Son of God.
As if, exactly. Also, friends, write in the comments. It's a controversial question because it's not entirely clear.
Write in the comments what you think he's actually talking about. Maybe you know him. Maybe you know this person. I just saw him 2 minutes ago. For the first time, really for the first time, this deeply. I have definitely seen him somewhere before at some point, but then again, I honestly don't know who he is, first of all. Let us take a moment to really figure this out together. The Son of God. If the Son of God is just some enlightened soul who came here. But there are many enlightened souls like that. Us to some extent. And many of the people watching this right now to some extent, right? So, if we use it as a metaphor, the Son of God who came here, then this Son of God really did come here. So, since the mid-20th century, he really has come and continues to reside and live right here among us today. Both the Son of God and the daughter of God. But if we're talking about some specific, well, roughly speaking, Messiah who is supposed to lead this world forward as an actual Messiah, I don't see anyone like that. Because, how to put it, nowadays the world, no matter how you look at it, has become global. It has become global, regardless. Now things work a little differently. If, hypothetically, some single Messiah were to come to lead us somewhere, well, as you can see, it's just that I've often headed up there myself in terms of plans, or some kind of architects. In terms of plans, like what to do next here, how do you even elevate this spirituality upwards? Because I myself, I have a mission. Here on this planet, my mission is to raise people up in terms of vibration. That's actually the reason I came here this time. In fact, given the age of my spirit, I could have chosen not to come here anymore. I personally don't see it as necessarily being just one single person. Again, the world is becoming far too interconnected and global. And on one hand, it's global, but on the other, it's far too diverse for that. And these old dogmas, the idea that a single, solitary Messiah figure will come and save everyone. That's kind of a naive and childish perspective to hold. It just won't work that way. Nowadays, if we look at the world, what works better, working alone or working in a team? In today's world, almost all great achievements have been accomplished by teams. I mean, Steve Jobs would never have created Apple if he hadn't had a huge team behind him. This video would never have come out if it hadn't been sponsored, if the script hadn't been written, if people hadn't come and filmed it. Basically, if I were just working entirely alone, I would probably still be making videos on a simple webcam in front of a shabby wall. Well, roughly speaking, I didn't actually film in front of a truly shabby wall, but still. As I feel it today, there really should be something more to it than that. Still, the process is global. In a global world, there are global processes that will pull forward this entire multifaceted world. It's such an intertwined world moving forward, so one person, even if they are some kind of super enlightened individual, is unlikely to accomplish much. But if there is a trend toward enlightenment, in the good sense of the word, if each person wakes up like a little star and starts to illuminate at least just their own family, it's not necessary. We don't need to connect deeply with the masses. We just want to reach our own family members. That's when we can honestly declare that the time for a global transformation and renewal of the world has finally come. So once again, I see this very clearly here. I see that I certainly don't see a Messiah who will come down alone and completely save every single soul all by himself. I don't see that. But rather, I see it as a process involving a large number of messiahs, a huge number. These are individuals who are all working together closely on a common, noble cause to pull people up. And if we truly look at the question from this perspective, then basically many of us, the viewers, you and me and many others, even those on neighboring channels, roughly speaking, we are all standing behind the virtual wall of YouTube or any other major platform like VKontakte or Rutube. We are all engaged in the very same pursuits. We are all these beloved and true children of God, which, by the way, is actually true. Even the very phrasing that this is the Son of God, well, if God is the Absolute, this most supreme, infinitely wise and harmonious substance, then we are all truly the sons of God. Because I was there, I was in the Absolute, I was in the Creator of everything. So, yes.
So you don't see a messenger or a son here, just in general at all?
As a separate Messiah, truly distinct, I don't see that.
It's just that in the Bible, it actually talks about the coming, without exact dates, of course, without specifying the time and so on. That is, it lists certain signs that the arrival of someone is imminent, like the fact that various natural disasters and wars will occur.
It's not even the Bible itself, but a separate and probably the most controversial part of it.
Yeah, in the Old Testament, so to speak. First, false prophets appear, and then after that, the Messiah is supposed to come. How do you even see this kind of concept?
Look, what you're describing right now is basically, I think, already the apocalypse. John the Theologian, who described all this, first, a rider on one kind of horse will come, then a rider on another kind of horse will come. So, at first, what exactly do we have there? Now, I'm not really a Bible expert by any means, but as far as I can remember, there's pestilence, war, well, discord, yes, then widespread disease, and then actually there is death. In the very end, it all comes down to that. And after that, something will begin. That right there represents the second coming of Christ. The topic of the apocalypse is a completely different and complex story. For some reason, I don't want to look there. I have the distinct impression that it is a highly complex type of functioning mechanism that works for the Christian egregore, and functions exactly as it should. The way it is expressed now, that's exactly how it works. It's like, again, when we filmed a video about aliens together. For those who are interested, the links will be here. Somewhere there will be links to it. In that video, I say that there are certain bases I absolutely don't want to look at. So when it comes to all these messengers and horses, for some strange reason, I just don't want to look. It's like there's a feeling that it's not really necessary to talk about it directly. I mean, I can just look at the edges. I can see and tell you about it, but it's as if it's not necessary, as if it's just a working mechanism. It's like you see that the clock is working. Why open it up and break it apart? Why look at the gears, examine them, and tell everyone, hey guys, look, this is how it works, and that's how it is, as if that's a bit sacrilegious. In the good sense of the word, not in the egregorial sense. So I'll put it this way. Yes, it is mentioned in the Bible, and it's mentioned for certain reasons, including to ensure that this egregore functions. And moreover, the very idea that the second coming of Christ, that too, it's like a certain projection into the future, purely egregorial as well, also to keep the egregore functioning. That's all I can say about this right now.
But if generally speaking we touch upon this Christian egregore, did Jesus really exist? And who was he?
If we touch on
the egregore.
the Christian one, yes, I like it. In this regard, I'm probably not your typical esotericist. I always tell everyone that I'm for Christianity, I'm for Islam, I'm for Judaism, for Hinduism, for Buddhism, for all the world religions, really. Because at one point in our history, they really lifted people back up. People out of the dark abyss into which all of humanity had once fallen. In essence, they came precisely to pull people out of that abyss, and to this day they are still pulling people up and doing it very well. Yes, with their own methods, yes, with their own ways, but overall I've never had any conflicts with Christians, Buddhists or Muslims. On the contrary, I treat them with the utmost respect, and I believe, well, I just know that many esotericists say things like, oh, that's your Christianity, your Islam, nothing of the sort. In fact, there is much more, much higher spiritual energy there than all that superficial stuff, distortion, politics, and so on and so forth. That's the first thing. The second thing regarding Christ, he was a very powerful, wise, elevated, and pure spirit who came once again with a specific mission. In terms of his spirit's age, he was a very mature spirit. He continues to remain here within the planet's field, and he continues to protect this very planet. Again, I have a very positive attitude toward the personality of Christ and toward Christianity in particular. All right then.
Then I have this question: why are there so many divisions and so many different religions in the world? You just listed them now. Everyone believes in one thing and denies another.
Exactly.
Yes, so why does such division happen? And in general, could we ever reach a single unified faith?
It is a complex concept. Precisely because people are just so incredibly diverse. People are too different. And even back then, in those days when human society was much simpler than it is today, much more straightforward than it is now, it was still, well, in any case, yes, every single world had its very own unique prophet. Roughly speaking, in China they had their own, in India their own. That is to say, Taoism first emerged within the borders of China, while Buddhism and Hinduism arose in India, first and foremost Hinduism, even before Buddhism, as the most ancient and venerable of all religions. Accordingly, in the Christian world, or the European adjacent world, to use a more descriptive term, it was there that Christ appeared. In Africa, they had their own people and so on. In the Muslim world, in the Arab world, Muhammad appeared. Each time, essentially, they brought a certain... And it was actually quite similar to a specific image. If you imagine spirituality as a massive bonfire, each of them was like a fresh, vibrant addition to that flame. A new portion of fire that was ignited at different times, in different eras, and in different parts of the world, so that this fire would rise up and not go out. On the contrary, it would grow even more powerful and intense. In other words, it was all carefully thought out. It's like these probes of awareness that are sent down at a certain time to the right place in order to push the spiritual evolution of humanity forward. So,
who sends such people down?
Who sends them? Well, again, according to Christianity, it's God. And in Islam, by the way, it's also God. They all say the same thing, right? Who sends them? God. In other words, higher powers. If we're speaking from an esoteric perspective, yes, it's higher powers that send them, which can also be called God. Because at a certain level, as we've already said, everything is one and one is everything. And God, the Creator, if we rise to His level, then everyone will see themselves in Him. So in principle, religions are not lying. It really is God who sends them. But this is a very simplified concept, a very simplified one. But again, at that time, it wasn't necessary. That is, if back then people had started talking about some astral worlds, layers, architects, realities, first of all, no one would have understood anything. And secondly, most likely they would have been burned at the stake and forgotten, and that would have been the end of it. That's why everything was always simplified as much as possible. In other words, information must always correspond to the era in which it is being conveyed. At this particular stage in time, I would say that there are certain architects of our reality who are responsible for our planet, who are responsible for our spiritual evolution, and who are carrying out a number of actions, including specifically the initiation of the descent of these very conscious souls into this place, in order to push evolution upward.
So in fact, they are like guides, like teachers, and like creators of this entire world.
Yes. In short, yes. And
are they even here, or what does it look like?
If we're talking about the architects, almost all of them are there. Because again, control comes from the top down.
So it's basically impossible, right? That someone would come here and stay here. And
there's no point for them. In other words, you can't manage things from here. Again, management always comes from the top down. You need to be above the structure to see it as a whole. If you end up inside the structure, you already lose some percentage of control. That is, you already lose some levers, you no longer see it completely. Architects of reality can come here and incarnate. They can do so on this planet. And even many, for example, remembered themselves working there in various architectural, let's say, departments of our planet. Yes, let's call it that. Nevertheless, you can genuinely become an architect exclusively from that vantage point, because you have to be above the structure.
So, just to avoid getting confused with the terminology again, architects of reality, messiahs, guides, awakened ones, enlightened ones, in essence, it's all about the same thing.
The same thing. It's all about one thing, to push all of us as humanity toward greater awareness, more light, higher energies, and higher vibrations. And the fact that the planet is now actively rising upward is actually the result of their joint collective work.
But the video says that, on the contrary, it seems things are not rising, but rather collapsing.
Here it's unclear again how he sees it, because very often moving to a new level happens through the destruction of the old level. The old level collapses, the new level arrives. The old level collapses, the new level arrives. Often, if you don't destroy the old, you can't build the new. Well, roughly speaking, let's say you have an old house standing there. It's completely old, right? And the plot is small. The world itself isn't that big. To build a new house, you'll have to tear down the old one. That's why often the destruction of the old is exactly the birth of the new. It's like the Hagalaz rune in runic magic, though that's a separate topic, not really related to ours. What does it do? It destroys the old so that the new can appear.
So if we bring this information into our world right now, what we get is exactly this very transition to the transition.
Destroying the old for the birth of the new. Of course, this is very easy to prove. I have discussed this many times already. Telekinesis in the middle of the last century was much worse than it is now. Accessing the higher realms, even say 20 years ago, it was much more difficult than it is now. Observing your past life. At the beginning and in the middle of the 20th century, when Michael Newton was working with his LBL hypnosis, when Raymond Moody was writing his book about near-death experiences and so on, other such accesses, past life regressions used to be much more difficult and took longer. Back then, it would take 2 or 3 days to prepare someone, but now, just the day before yesterday, a girl I already mentioned before recalled her past lives in only 2 or 3 minutes. It was so much faster. Everything has become much faster. The world has become more subtle, and now the etheric and astral layers have descended to us. Or rather, we have risen up to them. It's more accurate to say that we have ascended to them, of course, not the other way around. As a world, we have risen a bit to higher frequencies, and that's why everything has become easier. This is thanks in part to the spiritual teachers of the past, as well as the spiritual teachers of today.
How do you personally view this situation? Where do you think the boundary lies between embracing religious concepts, immersing oneself in them, and unintentionally limiting oneself and being able to accept any point of view, to accept any concept without judgment, simply allowing for all possibilities? This
is actually very easy to feel if, for example, you're reading a profound book written by some preacher or something else entirely, and you suddenly feel that this specific information inside you is actually expanding your mind and soul. It really expands you, almost purifies you. This signifies that the information is accurate. And it really comes from a place of purity. But if, on the contrary, this information makes you feel constricted, bound, as if you're being squeezed in a vice or trapped in some kind of prison, if you feel that sense of tightness, then that's a sign that most likely there's a lot more mind involved, because the mind always limits. Mental concepts coming from the ego always restrict, whereas spiritual, truly spiritual energy always expands.
And how do you feel about it yourself? Religious concepts?
It depends on which ones.
Well, let's take Christianity.
Thou shalt not kill is good. Thou shalt not steal is too. It's quite expansive, actually, especially if you recall who it was written for and in what era it was written. At the time, it was simply, in fact, it was the height of spirituality. As they say, there was nothing higher than that. Back then, no one would have understood anything else.
Could it be that much information has reached us distorted?
I would say that the personality of Christ was so pure, strong, and radiant that the core remained. And of course, a lot was built up around it, yes. But the core remained, and no one will ever be able to do anything to it. Because again, control comes from the top down. In order to exert some kind of influence over the very core of Christ, or to somehow control it, you would have to be at a higher spiritual level. He possessed an extraordinarily profound depth of spirituality. So you can try to build something around him, you can try to somehow cover him up, but his light will still inevitably break through.
Daniel, thank you very much for your answers. Friends, be sure to write your questions and impressions and share them in the comments. We see and read everything. You will also find all the links in the description below this video.
My dear friends, for 10 years now, I've been teaching a course on the higher self for a Russian-speaking audience. During this time, about 4,000 to 4,500 people have passed through my school. I've been working on this topic for 20 years. Today, my school is one of the largest and most famous specialized schools for connecting with the higher self in the Russian-speaking world. And then I suddenly realized that it is finally time to reach out to the masses, so to speak. Yes, to the much wider world and to the incredibly vast expanse of the entire global internet. All the professional skills I have carefully developed, all the dedicated practices I have refined, and all the quick entries, thorough checks, and rigorous exams I have built over the last 10 years are now being brought to a truly global level. I now invite you to join a brand new, specially discounted group for the comprehensive Return to the True Self course, now available in English for students everywhere. 6 months of work on stopping the internal dialogue, working with blocks, and focusing on actually accessing the higher self. Answering both simple and complex questions regarding purpose, contact with God, and with the planet. Answering basically any questions on any topic, including work, relationships, and anything at all. Manifesting desires through the higher self, viewing past lives through the higher self, and everything that didn't fit into the first 5 months in a separate 6th one. And after that, you'll have the opportunity to join the alumni club, as well as the chance to continue your studies at the 2nd level of the school. The price for the discounted groups is discounted. You can find all the information about this below at the link under this video.